What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so before I go further in this video, I want to give a shout out to Aram for his contribution to the channel. I saw your note, Aram, and I'm glad that you're enjoying the series of top 10 power forwards. And I also saw your question. Yeah, I will be doing a revamped or revised top 10. I sort of did that a year and some change ago, but it wasn't all in one video. Um, Bill Russell is no longer in my top 10. He's like maybe 12th or something, or he, he's up there, but I just don't see Bill Russell as a top 10 all-time player. I know that's not a popular take, but I just can't put someone up there just because of championships. And that's what I think most people do with Bill Russell. That's the hypocrisy in it. They'll say it's not about championships with other guys, but they'll put Bill Russell in the top 10 because of championships. Now, if anything, I was putting Bill Russell in my top 10 because of his social uh, activities as well as the 5 MVPs. Now, the 5 MVPs sometimes in my mind want me to put him top 10, but I don't know, man. I wrestle with it as a player, though. I'm just not convinced he's a top 10 all-time player. But I do know who's a top 10 all-time power forward, and that's Kevin Garnett. Just to do a brief recap, at number 10, I have Dolph Shays at number 9. I have Kevin McHale at number 8. And top 10 power forwards, I have Dan Essel, number 7. I have Elvin Hayes at number 6, Dirk Nowitzki. So at number 5, I have Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett was one of the most versatile, one of the best defensive forwards we've ever seen, power forwards. And we at the time, we'd never seen a guy with his athleticism and versatility at that position. He had some skills that you normally saw in guards. Um, he developed into a really, really good mid-range shooter. He was an excellent foul shooter for a big man, usually around 80%. Dominating rebounder, led the league in rebounding a couple times. Great shot blocker. Was a good passer for a big man. He had a variety of skills that you normally don't see. He wasn't a dominating scorer per se, like a guy putting up 25, 30 points a game. He wasn't that. Uh, but he was a guy that a little bit was that because he was not the biggest guy in the world, especially younger. But a lot of it was also because he wasn't selfish. Um, and he carried those Minnesota Timberwolves teams for the better part of 2000s until he joined Boston in that huge trade, which ultimately led to a championship. And in my opinion, put a couple of points in his legacy as well. Because I think if he didn't win that championship, I think Garnett would be a little bit lower on this list. Maybe not even, well, I think you had to put him top 10, but maybe number 10 or something, you know. But Kevin Garnett was born in South Carolina, all right? I believe he was born in 1976, I think it was. And he was born in South Carolina. And he took a liking to basketball sometime during his middle school years. And he was a very dominant basketball player in high school. And I think it was Maudlin High School in South Carolina. But he had to leave, get a transfer to Chicago due to a racial incident that transpired uh, when he was in high school. Now, apparently he wasn't part of it, but, you know, There was supposedly some retaliation that was going to be set upon him that could have been serious. So ultimately, his family decided to move him to Chicago, and he started in Chicago in high school there, and dominant high school player. I believe it's at the Farragut Career Academy in the west side of Chicago. And I believe in his 4 years of school altogether, he posted 2,553 points, 1,809 rebounds, and 737 block shots. Now, due to academic reasons, Kevin Garnett decided to forego college and went directly to the NBA draft at the age of 18, which was highly unusual in those days. Um, this was a different time than today when it comes to that. I think the last player to go directly from high school to the pros, it might have been Daryl Dawkins, and Daryl Dawkins was uh, a cautionary case of what could have happened if he had actually had some collegiate experience. But Kevin Garnett was still picked, I believe it was fifth overall in the 1995 NBA draft by the Minnesota Timberwolves. And back in those days, when a young player was picked like that, it started becoming a little bit more frequently in the late 90s with Tracy McGrady and Jermaine O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, of course. You really saw still more of a pecking order type thing. First of all, none of them were, including Garnett, they weren't as highly touted or heavily touted as, say, LeBron James was. Okay, so, you had that. So there wasn't a demand for Garnett to play a lot of minutes uh, from a fan's perspective, or a ticket's perspective. Also, you kind of still had like a hierarchy type thing back then. Whereas even though if a guy might be dominated in practice, because a guy might have played 8 or 9 seasons, and the coaches might feel like organizations might feel like this guy more deserves to be a starter than this other guy. You saw that. So the first half of Garnett's rookie year, he did not start. All right, but ultimately he did start, and I think in his rookie year he averaged something like 10 points a game. I think it was 10.4 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 1.8 assists per game. They failed to make the playoffs, and I believe Damon Stoudemire of the Toronto Raptors won Rookie of the Year at the time. Before the next season, the Timberwolves made a draft day trade for Stephon Marbury. During that season, Garnett posted averages of 17 points, 8 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 2.1 blocks, and 1.7 steals. With a 40 and 42 record, the Timberwolves made their first playoff appearance in franchise history. Uh, but that year they played the Houston Rocket team of Elijah Warren, Drexler, and Barkley, and they were swept out of the playoffs in the first round. Before the 97-98 season, Garnett would sign a 6-year extension worth $126 million. At the time, that was the biggest total money contract in the history of the NBA. I mean, it made jaws drop at the time. Many people were criticizing it, saying what did Garnett had done to deserve a contract that big. And many people will tell you that the trend of guys getting contracts that may not have deserved it, like a Jawan Howard, Mourning got a big contract. He was an all-star, but he hadn't won anything yet. A lot of this led to the lockout that we saw after the 97 98 season. But during the 97-98 season, Garnett continued to improve as a basketball player. He averaged 18.5 points, 9.6 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.8 blocks, and 1.7 steals per game. The Timberwolves made the playoffs again, did a little bit better this time, but lost 3-2 in the first round to the Sonics, led by the sensational Gary Payton. After this season, Tom Gugliotta left to go play with the Phoenix Suns. During the lockout shortened season, Garnett truly emerged at the post-Jordan era now. Garnett truly emerged as a superstar. That season, the shortened season, 50-game season, he averaged 20.8 points, 10.4 rebounds, 4.3 assists, and 1.8 blocks per game. Midway through the season, however, Stephon Marbury was traded to the New Jersey Nets. If I'm not mistaken, I remember there was like a battle between the two as to who would be lead. And I guess ultimately the franchise decided that Garnett was the franchise player. The Wolverines, not the Wolverines, excuse me, the Timberwolves lost in the first round that year, 3-1 to the eventual champion, San Antonio Spurs. The next season, Garnett continued to elevate his play, averaging 22.9 points, 11.8 rebounds, 5 assists per game, 1.6 blocks, and 1.5 steals. That year, he also made the first of his 4 All-NBA first team appearances and came in second place in the MVP voting. That's the year I believe Shaq won league MVP. That year, they also had acquired Wally Szczerbiak and Terrell Brandon, and the Timberwolves posted a franchise best 50-32 record. But once again, they lost the first round to the Portland Trailblazers, 3-1. Tragedy struck the Timberwolves that year. On May 20th, 2000, Garnett's close friend and Timberwolves guard, Malik Sealy, was killed by a drunk driver shortly after celebrating Garnett's 24th birthday. I still remember that. It was very, very sad occasion. The next couple of years would be more the same with Garnett putting up tremendous numbers, but his team not being able to go very far in the postseason. 2001, 2002, Garnett posted another significant season, averaging 21.2 points, 12.1 rebounds, 5.2 assists, 1.6 blocks, and 1.2 steals per game. But they were not able to get out of the first round. They lost 3-0 in the first round to the Dallas Mavericks. The next season, 2002-2003, was one of the best of Garnett's career, averaging 23 points, 13.4 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.6 blocks, 1.4 steals per game, and led the Timberwolves to a 51-31 record. But for the 7th consecutive year, they lost in the first round, that time to the Lakers, 4-2. Garnett was also second place in MVP voting. I believe Tim Duncan of the Spurs won MVP that year. One thing I can imagine is, could you imagine what Garnett would have averaged today with the inflated numbers today with scoring, as opposed in that era where some of the lowest scoring numbers in modern NBA history were acquired? However, the 2003-2004 season, Garnett and the Minnesota Timberwolves had their best ever season. That year, they had acquired Charles Speedwell and Sam Cassell, who replaced Troy Hudson at point guard. They also acquired Irvin Johnson, not Magic Johnson, but Irvin Johnson, the old Milwaukee Buck and Seattle Supersonic center. That year, Garnett averaged 24.2 points, 13.9 rebounds, 5 assists, 2.2 blocks, and 1.5 steals per game. That year, he won his first and only league MVP award. The Timberwolves went 58 and 24 that year and finally got the first round by beating the Denver Nuggets 4-1. In the next round, they eat through the Sacramento Kings 4-3 in the Western Conference semifinals. And after that, they battled the Los Angeles Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. The Lakers pulled off a 4-2 victory in the Western Conference Finals, but this did come with Cassell going down with a back injury. And without Sam Cassell, they did put them at a detriment. The next couple of years, with Latrell Sprewell refusing a contract, we all remember that. I got to feed my family. A lot of those other pieces getting old, Sam Cassell. Um, the Timberwolves fell back to mediocrity and then became awful. Garnett was still putting up big numbers, but it had to be a frustrating situation. Garnett also realized that time was beginning to run out in his prime. He was getting closer to age 30 by 2006. And the organization was finally becoming reluctantly acceptable to trading him. And then came the off season of 2007. On July 31st, 2007, Garnett was traded to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Al Jefferson, Ryan Gomez, Sebastian Telfair, Gerald Green, Theo Ratliff, cash considerations, Boston's 2009 first-round draft pick, and the 2009 first-round pick, which Minnesota had traded to Boston in the Ricky Davis-Wally Szczerbiak trade of 2006. The 7-for-1 deal constitutes the largest number of players traded for a single player in league history. Of course, that put him with Paul Pierce, Ray Allen from the Seattle Supersonics. This constituted the Big Three, which formed inevitable comparisons with the Big Three of Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. So the expectations were there to win a championship. Garnett started off very strong with the Boston Celtics. His first game with the Boston Celtics against the Washington Wizards, he scored 22 points and hauled down 20 rebounds. That season, 2007-2008, Garnett would go on to win Defensive Player of the Year. Boston would win 66 games. And although it was not a sweep to the playoffs, remember they had to go 7 games with Cleveland, 7 games with Atlanta. I think the first round. I think they went 6 games with Detroit. And then, of course, they won 6 games with the Lakers. With the Lakers at a bit of a disadvantage because they did not have Andrew Bynum in that series. But the key matchup in that series with the Lakers was the way that he severely outplayed Paul Gasol at their matchup. And the Boston Celtics won their 17th NBA championship. It was their first championship in 22 seasons. And to this date, it's their last championship. The next season, Boston had their eyes on a repeat, but this was dashed when Garnett suffered an injury prior to the playoffs. And I can't remember exactly how far they got, but I think they went to the semis before they lost to the Orlando Magic, if I'm not mistaken. 2010, Garnett was finally healthy, and Boston went to the NBA Finals. But by this time, there had been a switch in the Pau Gasol Garnett matchup. By this point, Garnett was now, let me see, I think Garnett was 33, going on 34. And after that injury, he was not the same player anymore. Pau Gasol had improved as a player, and he more or less dominated that matchup. And that was enough for the Lakers as far as and other things as well. That was enough for the Lakers to win that series 4 games to 3. Um, Next couple of years, however, even though they never were able to win another championship, they remained a thorn in the side of LeBron James. It was LeBron James who basically had to leave Cleveland to go to Miami because he couldn't get past his Boston Celtics team. And I believe it was 2012 in the playoffs where Paul Pierce's made jumper over LeBron put his team up unexpectedly 3-2 against Miami before Miami was able to win the next 2 games. I think it was in 2013 where when I say he, I mean Garnett and Paul Pierce were traded to Brooklyn. And after this, Garnett was more or less just a journeyman, maybe a mentor. He was a deteriorating player at this point, but he was a respected player in the NBA. And ultimately, 2015, I think it was 2015-16 season, he played one last year with Minnesota before retiring. For his career, Garnett scored 26,071 points. He hauled down 14,662 rebounds and dished out 5,445 assists for career averages of 17.8 points, 10 rebounds, and 3.7 assists per game. For his career, he was an NBA champion in 2008, MVP in 2004. He's a 15-time NBA All-Star. He was a 2003 All-Star Game MVP, 4-time All-NBA First Team, 3-time All-NBA Second Team, and 2-time All-NBA Third Team. He was the NBA Defensive Player of the Year in 2008. 9 times he was NBA All-Defensive First Team, which I think ties him with Michael Jordan, Kobe, and I think maybe Peyton, if I'm not mistaken. 3-time NBA All Defensive Second Team. 4 times he led the NBA rebounding. 4 consecutive years, 2003 to 2007. NBA All Rookie Second Team, 1996. He won the J. Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award in 2006. 2 times First Team Parade All American, 94 and 95. McDonald's All American Game MVP, 1995. South Carolina Mr. Basketball, 1994. Illinois Mr. Basketball, 1995. And Mr. Basketball USA, 1995. And of course, he won Olympic gold in Sydney in 2000. One little thing I want to say about Garnett before I go. A lot of players, however, did not like Garnett's uh, his approach to the game when it came to the opposition. Especially, this became especially notable after he joined the Boston Celtics. He was there before, but it was amplified when he joined the Boston Celtics. He demonized the opposition. He didn't want to be friends. He would sometimes say, things that were, let's say, less than nice. Some of this, I think, was because of the fact that the league was already beginning to transition to pussification. Yeah, I remember Kevin Garnett came into an NBA where you had Michael Jordan, uh, you had a lot of the old guard still there. Remember, he came to the league in '95. We still had Jordan and Drexler and Barkley. Um, a lot of those guys that were stars in the '80s and '90s, they were still playing. So this is the element that Garnett grew up in. Gary Payton, another one. Alvin Robertson, Terry Cummings, uh, Oakley. These were guys that were in the NBA when he came in there. But by the time of 2007, 2008, 2009, that was the LeBron era where these guys were starting to get a little bit more soft. And, when you say certain things with them, they get a little offended. Whatever. But other than that, to me, this is Garnett. I think